Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Good evening, Rush Nation. Welcome back to the Flagship show. Sorry there was no show last week. As you know, Dan and I were in Munich celebrating our Buccaneers' famous victory, which shows have been hard to come by this year. And then just the fallout of that, getting back, and it just meant we couldn't get a show in last week. So apologies. In fact, the guest I got tonight was going to do one on Wednesday, but it just couldn't happen with some scheduling. So he's here tonight. No, Dan is unfortunately feeling a little bit unwell. Too many of the lager beers in Germany. No, he's got a cold. He's feeling a bit under the weather. So Dan, get well soon, buddy. But don't worry, got an amazing guest here. He's Evan Brown at FF Evolution on Twitter, host of the Dynasty Debates podcast. You can also see some of his great work on Dynasty Nerds on Twitter, one of the funniest guys on Twitter as well. Evan, thanks for coming back on the show. I wasn't here the last time you were here, so I'm glad that you and I get to chop it up for the next hour or so.
Yeah, thanks for having me, buddy. Man, that is an awesome intro, I must say. Like, anytime you get to hear the wonderful Scott Hansen, introducing your show, it's a good time. So I am excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Let us talk some football. Let's just not talk about the Vikings. Let's just not talk about the Vikings. We'll just skip right over that. No need to talk about that.
I mean, yeah. I mean, listen, this season's just weird, isn't it? Like, I don't think anyone's overly shocked that Cowboys would have won that game, but by that margin was bizarre. But so many bizarre instances. I really thought the Colts were going to hold on against the Eagles. I mean, there was just a lot of really strange passages of play yesterday. The Patriots almost get a walk-off touchdown. Like, I mean, to be honest, I've never cheered a touchdown more than when Marcus Jones ran that back 83-odd yards. I was just like, of all the games that could have gone to overtime, if that had gone to overtime, that would have actually broken red zone, I'm sure, because it was awful. It was, I mean, like I went and watched it, believe it or not, Game in 40, and Game Pass need to put like a 2x feature on, like on podcasts, so that you can speed through and get rid of like all the crap, because the only thing noteworthy in that game is just how bad Zach Wilson is. Like, he missed that guy. He missed Braxton Berrios in the flat. Like, he's got no one around him for 5 yards, and he just sails the ball loosely over his head. I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, I'd have made that throw. You'd have made that throw. Anyone I know would have made that throw. But somehow Zach Wilson managed to just sail that straight over his head. Like, that was a classic, like, Jameis Winston move as well.
It was unbelievable, man. Like, that game was so bad. I, asked to watch the highlights and it just skipped through to the next game for me. Like, it was that bad. It was brutal, man. Like, there was some stinkers yesterday, dude. Like, the Panthers Ravens was just an absolute eyesore as well. Like, I'd rather watch paint dry than have to watch that back again. Like, it was a brutal week, man. Like, it really was.
Oh, what? I've never seen a team come off bye and then immediately need another bye. Like, they look so sluggish. I was like, what have you been doing for the last week? Have you just been stuffing your faces with like Mackie D's or something? Mind you, right, so joke on this. Well, true on this. So follow a few of the Buccaneers players on Instagram. And we see on Instagram the day before the game, 3 or 4 players in McDonald's on Instagram eating McDonald's before a game, and they've got like the fried shrimp and like Big Macs. I'm like, it's the day before a game. What are you doing eating Mackie D's? And that can't be good. Like, surely
just carb loading. They're following
I mean, the defensive lineman, but still, like, I think there's got to be a better way of doing it than going to McDonald's and carb loading. Like, surely, like, someone's getting them some steak or like a ton of mashed potato or a
bunch of pasta or something.
Right.
I know, dude. Like, well, it's better. I suppose it's better than like, what did AJ Brown do last year? Went to Chipotle or something and then got the runs in the game or something like that. So I suppose it's better than that.
Oh God. Yeah, honestly, so many talking points this week. And so I was gonna end with injuries. I almost feel like with all the news that's come out in the last few hours, we should talk about all the players that got injured, because injuries is the theme of this season. But it looks like now we've lost Kyle Pitts for the year. He has got a torn MCL. He's getting a second opinion, so it's not official that he's out for the year. We're waiting for that second opinion, but it looks highly likely. He looks like he needs surgery, and that will be him.
Ugh.
That looks like that'll be him done. So the tight end position, which was already pretty rubbish, and this was a good game for him, like usage wise, trend wise, was all starting to go his way until that injury. So that's not good. Chase Edmonds now looks like he's got an injury. He's going to be out a few weeks, and they've just cut Melvin Gordon in the last hour. We lost Justin Fields to a shoulder injury, so we'll see what happens there. Joe Mixon got a concussion, which means he's probably not back next week.
Stafford, wasn't he back in concussion protocol as well?
Who?
Wasn't Stafford back in concussion protocol again as well?
For the second time in 3 weeks. Now, the Stafford one a couple of weeks ago against the Bucs really annoyed me because they put him in concussion protocol after the game. So surely they knew during the game. And I think there was some form of investigation, which is why they pulled him out when they did.
Some skullduggery?
Yeah, I think if they played him all the way through again, there would have been some serious questions asked there. But yeah, so Matt Stafford's in the concussion protocol. And I think if you go in this concussion protocol twice in 3 weeks, you should have to sit a couple of games. Like, your health, you've got to sit longer than the week. Like,
yeah, especially the way their season is going as well. You know, it's like they're very close. Surely they're very close to the just like let's just look towards next year stage. You know,
but they're 3-7, so they're 3 games out in the division with
no Cooper Kupp.
With no Cooper Kupp now, potentially with no Stafford. I think if Stafford's going to be out for 2 games plus, I'm trying to think. I think it was it Golden Tate a couple of years ago who had 2 concussions. No, it was Sterling Shepard who had 2
Brandon
concussions
Cooks
in 3 weeks.
Wasn't it Brandon Cooks had like 2 concussions because everyone freaked out about him and they were everyone was like just fire sale in Dynasty getting rid of him for like a 3rd round pick because they were like, oh no, his career is going to be over
because he's had 2 concussions in 3 weeks. Yeah, I think there's a few instances. So I think he's got to sit for a couple of games. We lost Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which isn't for fantasy a huge loss, but obviously really sad. Lost Kadarius Toney once again, the man who you'll never see an injury on Kadarius Toney because it's just miraculous. I've never seen a player get so injured and the TV camera never once picks up when he gets injured. It's just like, oh, he's gone. That's it.
He's a magician.
Mike Williams came back and he got hurt. So that's him.
I played him in Scott Fishbowl. I literally sat George Pickens to play Mike Williams because I have Justin Herbert. So I was like, oh, I'll have this stack for the Chargers game against the Chiefs. It'll be great. No, it wasn't. It wasn't great. Spoiler.
No. Anything tells me about Scott Fishbowl. I'm so glad that tonight is the last day of Scott Fishbowl and I can fold that team up forever. I've lost 4 quarterbacks in that league. 4. It's literally my start-sit decision is do I play PJ Walker or Andy Dalton?
Nice. To be fair, Andy Dalton, I played him this week. He balled out for me in Scott Fishbowl, so respect. Yeah. But yeah, no, I had Carson Wentz. He's gone. I had Jameis Winston. He's gone. I had PJ Walker. He's gone. I was like, I am struggling. I am struggling here, man. Like Justin Herbert hasn't been himself this year. It's been tough going, man.
No, it's been a really tough one. For injuries, we still got more. Wan'Dale Robinson, he is done for the year with an ACL.
Yeah, that was heartbreaking.
And so that is the 6th Jets wide receiver to have torn their ACL in the last 9 seasons at MetLife. Like that's wild.
I tweeted it wasn't about that, but I was like, curses are real because of the way the Jets lost that game. I was like, this is crazy. There is some certain weird things in football, man, that you just scratch your head about.
Yeah, and it's definitely happening to the Giants right now. And then Jaylen Warren also picked up a hamstring injury, which kind of freed freed Najee Harris at last. And Najee Harris, for the first time since week 1, actually looked like he was a running back. And and I benched him everywhere since I've got so much of him. I actually benched him everywhere because I was like, you can't really use Najee Harris right now. But he did all right this week. So go figure that one. So a lot of injuries, a lot of still ongoing injuries. Obviously, we're going to be watching what happens with Fields and obviously we'll see what happens with Pitts. But we're getting down to bare bones now. Like we were talking off air just before we started about some of the waiver wire pickups, and it's like I've never been so excited to try and have a go at Latavius Murray in all my life. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, come on.
Is this 2017?
No, exactly that. I feel like I said this a few weeks ago, right? I said that I can't wait for Todd Gurley to appear in week 16 and come and win a championship for someone because,
Well,
like,
yeah, I mean,
we're
I
heading
picked up
that
David
way.
Johnson. Like, I picked him up last week. I was like, David Johnson, yes, please.
Because someone's going to come out of the woodwork now.
Yeah.
Like we're going to have CJ
Yep.
Anderson 2.0 happen, where someone's going to come out of the woodwork who's not been on a roster or been on a practice
Andrew
squad
Luck.
all season.
Andrew Luck's going to come out of retirement.
He's going to come play for Jeff Saturday.
Yes.
Move over Matt
Yep.
Ryan. Andrew Luck comes
Jeff
out
is going to be like the center. He's going to get out there, be the player coach, and Andrew Luck's going to come out of retirement, and Jonathan Taylor's going to score 7 touchdowns.
By the way, if that happens, I'm going to clip this. I'm going to clip this and put this everywhere. I'm going to send it to the Colts and say, "Hey guys, we've come up with this brilliant plan.
Yeah, we can save your season.
We can save your season. Good enough to pick like 15." Because you can't make the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, horrific. I mean, like, we're in such dire straits, man. But let's talk about some things that we learned in week 11. Is there anything that kind of really surprised you other than bad games and other than your Vikings? Is there anything that really shocked you, like from a fantasy football perspective this week, that was just like, I didn't expect that?
Well, I think 2022 is perfectly summed up in the fact that we're now in week 11. And I said to you before the game, Jamal Williams is the leading touchdown scorer, rushing touchdown scorer. And we're 11 weeks in. I mean, if that was like 1, maybe 2 weeks in, you'd be like, crazy stuff happens at the start of the season. Everybody 11 weeks in, and Jamal Williams is the leading rushing touchdown scorer in the NFL. I think that kind of sums up the season in my opinion. So that surprised me. It felt like it was just a weekend of good players and good teams just struggling. Like, don't get me wrong. I've said many times, the Vikings are frauds this year. I didn't think we were 8-1 team, but I didn't expect us to get chinned like that. You might as well have called us the Minnesota Sausage Suppers because we got battered, like we were absolutely destroyed. Like, it was embarrassing. And, honestly, I just thought like the Giants, I definitely expected them to be able to beat the Lions the way they've been playing. We talked about it already with the Ravens. I expected them to kind of walk all over the Panthers. It just felt like Saquon Barkley, Justin Jefferson, all these players that you were like in prime spots. Even Brian Robinson had 26 rush attempts last week against the Philadelphia Eagles, one of the best rush defenses in the NFL. Then they play one of the worst rush defense in the NFL, and he gets, he only plays like 30% of the snaps or something. It was just a weird week. It felt like, it felt like everything you expected to happen didn't happen. And then we got all these like amazing rookie wide receivers breaking out and all this craziness happening. So it was just a lot of unexpected, 2022.
Yeah, it's just bizarre. Like, when you look at the scoring this week, I mean, anybody that first of all, I put on Twitter Tutu Atwell scoring a touchdown.
Yes.
Like,
shout out Rich Cooling. His heart must be throbbing.
I'm like, you have to explain that one to me. The geezer's never caught an NFL pass. Like, you start him, it's gonna be like some crazy league he's in, and like, because I don't get it. Like, I don't get how you can start a guy who's never caught an NFL pass, never looked likely to catch an NFL pass. So yeah, that was wild. I mean, yeah, as you say, really bizarre week. I mean, who would have had Samaje Perine as the RB2 of the week with 30 PPR points? And I mean, some of that was injury, but he was performing even with Mixon on the field. So it wasn't all injury. And then you've got, just some guys just absolutely popping, and you had some guys absolutely tank. Like, for me, you mentioned the wide receivers. I'll get onto them now. You're talking about 5 wide receivers in the top 10 in PPR points this week. And they finished 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Olave at 6, Watson at 7, Robinson at 8, Pickens at 9, and Burks at 10. Like that, I can't remember a week in history. In fact, and I'm sure there is, and someone can at me or tell me, and that's fine. But I can't remember a week where there were 5 rookie performances in the top 10. And granted, there's Monday Night Football to go, and we still got DeAndre Hopkins, so he might break that, and etc. But I just think that's insane. Like, to have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on the week, and again, you're talking about guys who, these guys aren't on great offenses. Like, Olave's done it all year with a pretty ropey quarterback. Watson, I mean, yeah, he had that big breakout game. I don't think anyone expected a repeat of that. Robinson, who was coming in questionable, we weren't even sure if he was going to play. Turned out he probably shouldn't have. But again, huge performance from him. Pickens on that terrible offense, and then Burks on that terrible offense. Like, I'm not even talking about they're talented players, but they're not. Yeah. They're not good offenses that are known for putting up huge wide receiver performances. So it's just wild this week.
Yeah, totally. No, I think, and like you said, I mean, I think it's sort of, there's lots of things we can take away from it. I think that this wide receiver class is actually better than we were told. Do you know what I mean? Because I think everybody kind of undersold the class and said that it was rubbish and garbage and there's only 2 or 3 good players and stuff. And it's like, well, actually, there's some pretty talented players in this class, but also, like we said, it's the year of chaos. It's 2022. Jamal Williams is the leading rushing touchdown scorer. I mean, there's 5 of the top 10, wide receivers are rookies. Like, it is mental. Like, it is crazy,
It's just, yeah, it's a bizarre season all around. I mean, like, Trenton Irwin finished the wide receiver 20 on the week with Tutu Atwell.
Yeah.
I don't even want to go and look at my wide receiver rankings this week, because there's no way I put Trenton Irwin and Tutu Atwell in the top 20. Like, not a hope. Not a hope that happens. So yeah, pretty tough tough week, and yeah, it's. I mean, you say start your studs, but it was a tough one all round. Was there anything else you kind of took away from the week that really sort of surprised you?
No, I mean, like I said, like you said, you've touched a lot of it. The rookies playing really well, the injuries, the kind of players that we thought were going to be good, struggling. It's been a crazy week. I think for me, it's just, I was thinking about this last week, and then just this week kind of reinforced it for me. It's even when you play a lot of, like, I play primarily Dynasty, but like in season, it's crazy how much people are reactionary, so one good game boosts somebody's stock like crazy, and then one bad game and everyone's like, they're a bum, they suck, and like, get rid of them, they're horrible. And you're just like, I think, especially if you do play Dynasty, my biggest thing at the minute is just to keep a level head and stick to your guns and make smart moves that you're thinking about for the long term, not to like, completely empty the cupboards and go for it this year by getting rid of a bunch of young studs. Like, I've seen Jamar Chase got traded the other day for like, I think it was like Amon-Ra and a second or something like that, which is like, I like Amon-Ra a lot, but we still don't know what that offense looks like with Jameson Williams coming back. Jamar Chase, yes, he's a bit boomer bust, but so are anybody. I mean, look at Justin Jefferson this week, gave you 7 or 8 points, but he also has that ability to give you 45, 50 points and win you your week. So, for me, it's like, let's not make any knee-jerk reactions. Let's not, especially in Dynasty, understand in redraft is a different beast. You got to go all in, especially if you're on the verge of playoffs. You got to go for it and be aggressive, but try and think a little bit level-headed, take the emotion out of it, maybe get a second opinion on any trades you're doing, things like that, just so you don't do something you really regret.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, and I completely agree with you about reactionary. There's so much box score scouting, and then there's 2 camps. There's the people that box score scout and chase points, which is just the worst thing you can do, and then there's the people that have their unconscious or conscious biases. So there was a big feeling on a lot of players this week. Kadarius Toney seemed to be the hotness this week. I even asked people why. I'm curious to hear, because I was out on Kadarius Toney this week. I didn't see, based on his snap share, based on his new, people underestimate that the Chiefs offense is complicated. It's a complicated offense. You don't pick that up in a week or 2 weeks. So you're going to be very limited in what you do. People are like, well, he's a former first-round pick. I mean, if that's the argument we're using, Denzel Mims, Jalen Reagor, like, we've got so many we can throw out here that is not a reason to, because one team overvalued your talent. I'm not saying he's not a talented player. I watched him at Florida a lot as a Gator fan. I think he's got talent, but he's got a very unique skill set, and he's an athlete first and a football player second. I think that, for me, is a difference to other players. When I look at other players out there that were just like, so many overvalued based on talent, situation, and less so on opportunity. And people confuse opportunity. People look at those like 3 players are out. This is now an amazing opportunity. Look at what happens in LA. Oh, Cooper Kupp's out. It's an amazing opportunity for someone, or it's a diluted situation and everybody gets a very morsel piece. Like, injuries don't represent opportunity as much as people think they do. Say with Tony, oh, well, Hardman's out. Well, Juju's out. So it's going to be him who gets the ball. Well, you're disrespecting guys like Watson, who've been on that roster all season, who know the playbook, have run those routes, and maybe not had the catches to go along with the work they've done. And I think that's a really key point that people forget, that actually injuries can really convolute situations. Like, they can actually make them more difficult instead of more clear. And I think this season we're seeing a lot more of that, where wide receivers get hurt and it goes into more of a committee role, and you're seeing guys emerge from, the practice squad or just deep down on the roster, just all of a sudden making small impacts, not enough for fantasy relevance, but they're taking away from a player going. It's not like, okay, so Devontae Adams is going to go down, so Mac Hollins is going to go and get 10 for 121-2 this week. Like, no, they'll just split it amongst other guys on the roster. Like, I think that's a key thing that people have.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would take it even a step further, and I would say specifically when you break it down into positions, I would say wide receiver, you're even more right about that than with running back. Like with running back, I think it is a little bit more plug and play, because we saw when Jonathan Taylor went down, Deion Jackson stepped in and was running back one on the week. Because if most, not all, but most running backs that are good enough to be on an NFL roster, if you give them 25, 30 carries, they'll probably give you something worth, playing in your fantasy lineup. But especially wide receiver, man, it's a lot more, like you said, skill based. It's about knowing the playbook. It's about having that rapport with the quarterback. And yeah, so absolutely, it's easy to get, mouth watering, just tantalized by like what could be with players like Kadarius Toney, the Chiefs offense, or we're all guilty for it with the 49ers offense. We always want pieces of the 49ers offense. But the thing is, like you said, we have to remember that, and that's what I was saying when CMC went to the 49ers. My whole thing was, man, I don't trust Shanahan. And I just don't for fantasy. I don't trust Shanahan because A, he doesn't care about fantasy football. B, he's literally like that kind of guy where he'll just be like, hey, you know what? This team we're playing, they're really weak against the tight end. It's a George Kittle week. And he'll give him 15 targets. The very next week, he'll be like, oh, I just need George Kittle to block all week. It's a Brandon Ayuk week. You know what I mean? Or he'll be like, I'm pissed off at so-and-so. He doesn't get any carries this week. It's all Jeff Wilson before he was traded, but now it's Elijah Mitchell. And you know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, I think you're right. 100%. I think there's a lot of emotion, and that's understandable, but we have to really, as fantasy football players, dynasty players, especially, you have to try and take the emotion out of it. And that's one thing I'm really conscious about trying to do. I see a lot of players, but I see a lot of analysts get really into take lock, and then that underlying sort of theme, they're just looking for things to kind of reaffirm their prior notions on a player. So if they had 100%. Told themselves that player sucks, they may have a great 3-week stretch, and then the minute they drop a pass, like, oh, see, I told you this guy was a bum. Oh, look at this guy, he can't catch the ball. It's like, you just have to be willing to change. I was wrong about Geno Smith, hands up. I've said it so many times. I did not think Geno Smith was good. You know what I mean? Yeah. And honestly, I've gone out and bought him in multiple places now because I'm like, hey, I'm going to try and change my opinion when it seems it's the right thing to do. And I think that's one of the best things you can do in fantasy is look, you're going to get it wrong, man. We're going to all get it wrong. We're guessing about a game within a game, and it's you have to be quick to change your opinion and quick to move in the other direction when necessary.
Yeah, and that's a really key point. And one of the areas of fantasy football that people don't analyze is, as you mentioned, the coaching staff. What are the coaching staff going to do? So you talked there, a classic example about the 49ers and Shanahan. Look, Shanahan is tasked to win Super Bowls. He has a really unique opportunity to win his division that probably wasn't in play in August. But the Rams are so bad. The Cardinals haven't been good. He's got to beat out Geno Smith and the Seahawks to win the division. If you were told Kyle Shanahan that in September, he'd have laughed in your face. That was not a situation that should have been in play. And he, at the moment, is rotating these players because he wants to keep them fresh. And it's very difficult to predict who the hotness is going to be that week in the Shanahan offense. And it is difficult. And you have to start all of those players. And they're very high ceiling, low floor players. Almost every one of them, including Christian McCaffrey. Every single player in that offense is easily prepared to put up 5 points or less because Shanahan can just go, nope.
Yeah, exactly.
And change the scenario.
that was for me. I mean, I'll be honest, like I said, I did it for several years as well, but last year was kind of my like breakup with Shanahan. Me and Shanahan were divorced. We don't speak anymore. He doesn't have my number. You know, I've changed numbers. I don't even talk to him in the street. I go across the street, so I don't have to talk to him. It's like, you know, the whole Brandon Ayuk thing just really completely was the nail in the coffin for me, because I know Brandon Ayuk is a talented receiver. I really like Brandon Ayuk, but the fact that he basically just was in the doghouse 3/4 of the year, and it was literally just down to like, oh, he's not blocking the way I want him to, or he doesn't, you know, his attitude wasn't a certain way. And it's like, man, I can't be bothered with that, you know, with dealing with that in my roster. So I actually don't go out of my way to try and acquire San Francisco players, because I feel like the premium that you have to pay for them isn't worth the like steady production that you can get from them. You know what I mean? And it's just one of those things. Like, don't get me wrong, I do have a couple of pieces here and there, but I don't go out of my way to acquire them, even though I totally love Debo as a talent. I love Ayuk as a talent. I love Kittle. I think he's one of the most talented tight ends in the league. I love him, but I also hate the fact that there's quite a few times where Shanahan's like, look, you're going to be our extra offensive lineman all game, and you're just going to block like crazy and get one target, you know?
Yeah, it's just absolutely wild. And, you know, there's other teams where that is in play. You know, I'm going to talk about Rashad White in a bit. And, you know, I'm not going to talk about him in negative terms, because it's not about the talent, but the situation doesn't lend to him being a good fantasy asset. Isaiah Pacheco is another one. Isaiah Pacheco was absolutely outstanding on Sunday. He absolutely ran his nuts off, looks like a great pure runner, yet doesn't get any targets. And his 100+ yard game equates to 10 points in fantasy football, because he doesn't get targets. He's not going to get the goal line carries. So Isaiah Pacheco looks like an unbelievable running back who is just not going to be that great for you in fantasy football. He is a very low ceiling player. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't roster him, because this season, 10 points is probably good enough to be the RB15 on the week. It's definitely a starting position. But the bottom line is in most years, we wouldn't be chasing 10 fantasy points from a player. And unfortunately, that this is where situations, especially where you've got complicated offenses, you know, you've got complicated offenses like the Chiefs, like San Francisco, like the Buccaneers. It's not as easy to make the tea leaves read what you want them to read, because it's not just down to, oh, well, they've got Mahomes at quarterback, so naturally every receiver is going to do quite well. It's actually a very complicated scheme, and it's based on the situation. They'll go to the guy they think is going to make the play in that situation, and they'll spread the ball around, because they've spread the ball around all year. We shouldn't just assume there's a couple of injuries. Oh, well, this guy's going to get all the ball. Like, it does. That's not how NFL teams work. They will, you know, they don't care who catches the ball. They don't care who runs the ball necessarily. All they care about is winning the football game. And they're going to pick the best plays and the best open designs to do that. And a lot of that's reactionary, especially outside of the opening 15 plays. Like, if you want to see who the coach's favorites are, go get yourself NFL Game Pass and go look at who is getting the ball in the first 15 plays. Because that will tell you who the coach's favorites are, because they're the pre-schemed plays. They're the ones that are pre-designed by the quarterback, the coaching staff, and the offensive coordinator, and they plan them together and they draw them up and make their best 15 plays, and they're premeditated unless there's an audible. They're the ones you can tell who are the coaching favorites. So that's where the only kind of tea leaving is. But on those complicated offenses, don't just assume there's an injury. Don't assume there's a situation where someone's going to walk in and get 10 targets, because it's just not going to happen. And we're seeing this across multiple teams in the NFL this year. Like, it's a very different time from a few years ago, where we had these very narrow fantasy teams like the Packers. Well, you know, Devontae Adams is going to get his. You know that as a result, Aaron Rodgers will be fine because he's got Devontae Adams, and you know Aaron Jones is going to be fine. And that's basically how you play. And then the same with the Ravens, where you know you're going to start Lamar, you're going to start Hollywood Brown, and you're going to start Mark Andrews. And like, you have these really narrow teams. And now I think it's a bit different. You're going to have these guys come out of the weeds and have pop-up weeks, like we've seen Ben Skoranek have a couple this year. We've seen it with Justin Watson this week, put up 11 flex-worthy points. Like, it's going to happen, and these guys are going to come out of the woodwork, especially as situations become more complicated.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Like, I think You're right. I think it's a great year, like especially if you play Dynasty, it's actually a great year to not be very good because like you know what I mean? Like I feel like it's a great year to just be like selling off like any like out like your tertiary pieces that you're not planning on building, just acquire capital and look towards the next year. I think it's a really tough year to be really in the thick of it because so many people are getting injured, so much uncertainty, and you have that draw of like you want to win, but at the same time you're like, oh, I don't want to give up like all my like future picks and everything for like some 29-year-old running back, you know, like just so I can try and win this year. So it is a tough year, man. Like I think that's why, you know, honestly, for me, everyone's different. I love coming on shows like this. I love finding the things that you enjoy about fantasy football. Let's remind ourselves about what we actually enjoy about the game, because it's been tough in a lot of seasons, a lot of people's leagues. It's been tough. You know, you've had so many injuries, or you've had, you know, just trades that didn't go your way. Things have happened. And, you know, honestly, being able to talk football with friends, or being able to just like have a laugh and have a bit of banter. And like I'm in a league with, you know, Jeff Greenwood on Twitter there, you know, the fantasy, you know, and like he's the co-host of the Tackle Dummies pod, and me and him are playing each other.
Oh, you've got a mute.
Sorry about that. You know, I did a little funny, like just trash talk video to Jeff this weekend because we're playing each other in his league in the Tackle Dummies league. And I was like, you know, just talking a bit of trash and having banter and just trying to remember, like, let's just remind ourselves what we enjoy about fantasy football. You know, let's have fun with it. Should actually be fun at the end of the day. I know it sounds crazy, but it should be fun.
Yeah, it should be fun. And like, I remember having a conversation with someone this week, and it was about a trade that went down in the league, and it was, you know, not a trade that I was a big fan of, but I spoke to the person who made that trade, and they were like, "I'm happy. I got two of my favorite players on the roster," and I'm like, "How can I argue that? Like, it's fun. Like, the guy's got two of his favorite players he loves watching on Sundays on his roster. Yeah, okay, he overpaid, but it's his team. Like, if he's happy, I'm like, why did you do the trade? Well, because I've got both their jerseys, I've got them signed." I love them. I wanted them on my roster. I get I overpaid, but it's my team and I want to have fun. And I'm like, I can't argue that. Like, I can't argue it in the slightest. Like, that's what it's about, right? You play your favorite players and you just have fun.
I would 10 out of 10 times rather be in a league with a bunch of people like that who are trading, talking trash, having banter, you know, just like rubbing it in each other's faces when they win, even if their roster isn't the sexiest roster or whatever, you know, just because they're having fun, they're having a go, they're enjoying it. There's the camaraderie that comes with it because it is a game. We're supposed to be having fun. I think we get way too serious sometimes with our fantasy football. And,
100%.
you know, honestly, I mean, so people get so like, Matt, do you remember back to the summer when people were literally, you know, cursing each other and like starting civil wars over Gabe Davis? You know, it's like, who cares? Like, calm down, people. Like, let's have a laugh. Let's have a bit of fun. Yes, let's give our best takes and our best advice, and let's try our best to win because winning is fun. But at the end of the day, you know, it's about like the friends you're playing with, the people, you know, the bragging rights, but it's like having a bit of fun, you know? So I think, you know, that's why I'm really enjoying this show, man. Like, thanks for having me on because do you know what? It was a tough weekend and busy weekend and like, you're just kind of tired. And then you're like, hey, you know, it's good to chat, have a laugh, enjoy, you know, having a laugh, talking football and just enjoy yourself, you know?
Yeah, amen. And listen, open invite. Anytime you want to come on, there's an open invite for you. I've said this before. We'll get you on more regularly because, yeah, as you say, it's just about having fun.
Yeah.
And like
Dan,
you said, everyone's.
Shout out Dan. Love Dan.
Yeah. Dan's a dude. Absolute
He
dude.
is.
But yeah. Oh, well. He's, listen, I think you hit the nail on the head. And especially this time of year, this season's hard. It's a hard year.
Yeah. And
it's going to be lucky. Whoever ends up as champs this year.
Exactly.
It's a bigger element of luck than previous years for me because of the.
And you know what? I actually thought about the other day. I'll just say this, and then I know I'm rabbiting on here, so apologies. But good. I am, you know, you invite me over onto the show. You got to know you're going to get a hatchet man who's going to talk too much, and you're going to have to mute me. But look, I mean, dude, we're coming up on Christmas. It's a month away. This should be a fun, exciting, happy time of year. You know, we've worked hard. We've had a long season. Like, let's not get all like our panties in a bunch over like some trades or some waiver wire misses or, you know, whatever. Let's have fun, remind ourselves why we do this, like have a good time, build relationships, be nice people, don't be dicks. You know, it's not that hard.
100%. And I think everyone needs that reminder. I need that reminder every time and again. Like, you just sit there and you get caught up in your own mess. And listen, the one thing I'll take from this season is there's a lot more. I put this the other day. There's a lot more hate on Twitter towards fantasy analysts. Like, I have felt more hate this year especially xenophobia in particular, I feel like has gone through the roof this year. Shows I've done, and people haven't even heard me speak. They hear the first word out of my mouth and go, well, this clown knows nothing because he's from the UK. Like, how can he know anything about fantasy football? And it's just like, all right, you've not even, like, at least listen to the show. If you think after an hour I'm an idiot, then I can't argue that. But I just think there's a lot of, and I think part of this is, there's this whole fantasy receipts account thing that's going on. And I know that Josh Larkey's posted a lot on this. And I don't have a problem with the account in its idea, like of taking takes and using it for a bit of comedy. It's not my sort of comedy, but I think if people self-submitted them, like it went, hey, look, I posted this take and it's awful and everyone's having a laugh at it, I think that would be quite a funny approach to that account that I'd go, yeah, okay. My issue with it is twofold. One, it seems to pick on up and coming analysts that are learning and refining their process. And they're open and honest enough to admit that. They're not trying to say, hey, we're knocking home runs here. They're giving their honest advice and opinions based on how they're distilling information. And they're going to be wrong. God, the first year I was doing this podcast, I threw out a ton of crap. I mean, I still throw out a ton of crap that's wrong every year. We all do.
Yeah.
Like, we always get crap wrong every single year. But those early years, I got a lot more wrong because, hey, my process was very young and not well refined and not defined enough. And I hadn't got into really advanced metrics, and I hadn't got my tape watching all the way down and didn't watch every game and all those sorts of things. And as you go through, you refine your process, and every year you get better. It's the 10,000 hour principle. So picking on young analysts really really grates me on that account, because they're people that aren't saying, they're not paid people in the industry. They're not earning £50,000 a year trying to do this. They're just trying to work out a process. And the only way you can do that is by doing it, putting rankings out there, putting takes out there. And I think that's a really harsh thing to judge people on, and then to set a pack of wolves on them, which is the biggest problem I have with that account, which is it's very visceral. And I'm getting more and more DMs and more replies that are xenophobic, that are of a nature that are beyond reasonable. Now, I don't mind people arguing me and telling me I'm wrong. I don't mind people saying, I think your process is wrong. And I'm up for the debate. I don't mind disagreement, and I don't mind the debate. What I do mind is personal name calling. Someone went into my DMs this week and called me a worthless piece of shit. And that's just unnecessary. That's not pleasant for anybody. It's not pleasant for me. It's not pleasant for anybody. But this is increasing. It's a large amount of people now that is thinking that behavior is okay. And I find this year that is escalated 5-fold, 10-fold. I mean, I've always had a bit, but I find this year I don't know about you, if you see that or feel it, but I mean,
do. I think it's really, I'm actually glad you brought up the conversation, to be honest with you, because I think it's important that we talk about these things, because honestly, this time of year, always reminds me, and this is not really off topic, but it's just, this is my journey on my thought on it is, one of my best friends growing up committed suicide around this time of year, a couple of years back. And I didn't even know that he was struggling with anything. You know what I mean? I didn't know that he was depressed or, because, we're like as guys, a lot of times, we just, oh yeah, it's all good. Yeah. And you just pretend like everything's fine. And, I remember really, really hit me hard. And I still think about it and stuff, because obviously one of my best friends, I grew up with the guy. But I guess what I was going to say is you never know what people are going through. You never know what people, people can be like the funniest, most outgoing, most chatty person in the world. Robin Williams. He was one of the most, interesting, funny, just warm characters, loved people, cared about people, and suffered strongly with depression. And, we know how that story goes. But my point is yeah, absolutely. I think the sad thing is that at the moment in the world on Twitter and just in general, it's negativity gets a lot more buzz and a lot more praise than positivity, because you said the fantasy receipts count. I don't have a problem with receipts in the sense that I agree that there's a lot of kind of rubbish, hot takey takes that get thrown around. And then I always think, and this is just me, I always think I'm look, I'm not, Mike Wright, the fantasy hitman. I'm not this guy who's got 150,000 followers and the biggest, platform in the world. But if I'm going out there and I'm like, this player sucks, you need to sell this player, I'm always sort of like cognizant of like the idea, like, what if people listen to me and they go and sell that player for like pennies on the dollar, and then it turns out that player was actually really good and I was giving horrible advice. So I always kind of think about that before I give out these takes, especially strong takes where I really am like passionate about something. But I think a lot of people were shooting from the hip, especially this last off season, and saying some stuff that was a bit maybe out of pocket. And I think that's fair enough to call people out on that kind of stuff. But I think you're exactly right. And I think you nailed it. There's a major difference between saying, hey, I think that call was really bad, and hey, you're worthless, or hey, you're an idiot, or you're stupid, or you don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, for some reason, and there was another account that got, made, it was like something like fantasy positive receipts or something like that, right? And like, honestly, I saw it the other day and it has like 400 followers. You know what I mean? But yet this fantasy receipts account has like 20,000 followers. And it's like, people want to see the negativity. They want to see people get drug in the streets. They want to make fun of people, pile on people. And honestly, if you don't like somebody's takes, just unfollow them, or just don't, respond, or don't engage with it. It's a free world. You can choose who you want to follow, who you want to engage with, who you want to talk to. And like I said, at the end of the day, there's plenty of those people that they've brought up that I don't really agree with their analysis or whatever, but I certainly don't go out of my way to attack them or to make them feel like worthless people, because I don't know, like, that's wrong. That's wrong. You don't ever need to do that. It doesn't need to be personal. And B, like, you just don't know what people are going through. You know what I mean? You
100%.
really don't. And as somebody who has struggled with mental health in the past and things like that, you don't want to be the person who's just adding more weight on that person's shoulders. And like, honestly, being a content creator is a difficult, vulnerable thing. You're basically saying,
100%.
Here's how I feel about something that you could be completely wrong about. And you're throwing yourself out there. You're being honest and vulnerable. And you're often, if you're a content creator, trying to do too much. So you're doing rankings and you're doing podcasts and you're doing articles and you're doing this and you're doing that. And so you're stretching yourself really thin. And you're trying to grow and you're trying to learn. So it's like, yeah, dude, again, like I said, it goes all back to like, we need to calm down. We need to have fun. We need to be kind people. And we just need to give people a bit of grace and try and realize that, like, hey, even if I dislike your take or I think your take is wrong, that's absolutely fine. I have people, like you said, I have people I disagree with, or even, quote unquote, argue with, about stuff, because I really love, like, James Cook. I'm like, oh, I think he's a good player. And then people are like, you're an idiot. He's not a good player. And I'm like, oh, I think he is. And then we have a back and forth, and that's okay. But as soon as like it becomes, well, you're a moron, you don't know what you're talking about, you've obviously never seen, you don't understand football, all that kind of stuff. It's like, look, hold on a second. Like, we don't need to get personal about it. We don't need to like actually attack people. We can disagree
100%.
and still be friends. And I think that's important. I think real friends know how to disagree, because it's like that old saying, faithful are the wounds of a friend. It's like, look, your real friends will say, look, dude, you're making a mistake. What are you doing? Don't do that. That's a bad idea. But at the same time, they've got your back. You know what I mean? And I just think, I know I'm going on, but I think that was a good point that you made.
No, I'm with you 100%. And I think that's so important. The two things that got me there really touched me. One, first of all, that I'm really sorry that you've had to go through losing someone. I've lost someone in a really good friend of mine in very similar circumstances. And this time of year really does put mental pressures on people that you don't know what people are like, and to go through that. So I'm sorry that you have gone through that, because I've been there, and it's a horrible, horrible feeling, because you feel guilty yourself. You feel like you should have done something, or you could have done something, and you question yourself. And in the long run, you couldn't have. But that takes a long time to get to that realization, and you torture yourself over it. So I appreciate you being honest there, because it's hard. The second thing I'd say is that you hit the nail on the head, that you don't know what people are like. I'm a pretty gregarious and outgoing person. It's not a front, but it is a defense mechanism, because I've been bullied for the last 31 years of my life. I've quit jobs. I've changed schools because of the way I look, because of my hair color, and all sorts of different things. I've gone to places and not fit in. I've gone to workplaces and people talk behind my back, or have stolen things, or whatever it is, right? And they're experiences in life that have made me tougher and stronger, and I have a certain amount of mental fortitude that's occurred as a result of all of that. But people, and my lesson to people is this: you can see someone who's very gregarious, very outgoing, as you mentioned, Robbie Williams, was someone who seems like they're a really, really tough person, that like, hey, they give it out hard, they take it hard, like, but actually a lot of that can be a defense mechanism. Like, when I read stuff sometimes I can really just, if I'm having a really good day and I'm really well centered and in a really good place, I can brush that stuff off like quite quickly. If I'm having a really tough time, like that, I can read that comment like 60 times and like center on it in a really
Yeah.
negative way. And then
Yeah.
and it could be someone I never meet, someone I never plan to meet, someone I'm
Yeah.
never going to interact with before, someone I'm never going to interact with again. But that comment can really stick in my head for a period of time, to the point where I have to work it out of my system and go, okay, well, I'm not. And you have to do positive affirmation. You have to get people to give you positive affirmation. And I think you hit the nail on the head. People just need to, it's not even about being kind, right? Because some people aren't inherently kind people. They find it difficult to be outgoingly kind, which shocks me. But okay, there are people like that. Just, if you can't be kind, just don't be bad. Don't be mean. Just say, I disagree, and
Yeah.
call it there. Or don't
Yep.
interact. Or do you know what? I'd rather someone on Twitter look at one of my takes, go, this guy's an idiot, and just block me. Like, just block me or mute me. I don't care. Like, because I'll never hear or see the impact of that. But if you go into my DMs and call me a worthless piece of shit, I mean, like, that stings. It stings a lot, especially
Exactly.
when it's not going well. And I think that's the
No,
part
exactly.
that if one person listens to this and goes, do you know what? That's a fair point. I hadn't quite grasped that, or I hadn't quite thought of it like that. Then I think our job here is done. And I think this has got a lot deeper than we perhaps thought it was going to be at this time.
Yeah,
But
no, I
it's
think, but
important
it's good, man. Like, because this is something that, like, honestly, we don't talk about enough, because,
No.
you know, the truth is, like, you're probably like me and a lot of other like content creators or people who really love fantasy football. We put a lot of time and energy into it, and a lot of thought and passion. You know, this is what we love. We love talking about it. We love analyzing and stuff. And absolutely, it's like, just be human, be kind to people. And if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to tear people down and be a jerk. And honestly, like you said, you actually made me think of a really good point. And we'll move on. We'll talk about football, I promise. But if anybody's listening to this and you are struggling with mental health, man, first of all, that's okay. Everyone struggles at times. I think I would go so far as to say pretty much everybody struggles at times, whether or not you have a diagnosed mental health issue, or whether you're just having a bad week or bad month, or you're feeling anxious. Life comes at you, things happen. It's okay, but also get help. Speak to somebody. Don't be like my friend who waited too long and didn't get help. You know, don't be like, you know, just a tough guy or a girl. Don't be like somebody who just said, I'll figure it out. Reach out, talk to somebody, a friend, a parent, whoever it is. Or if you need to, there's places like Samaritans and things like that where you can literally, you know, it just, because what we're talking about. And then I just thought about, you know, probably a lot of your listeners will probably know who Shane Manila is. Shane is the worst. You know, he's on Dynasty Trades HQ. He's going to be on my show in a couple. He's going to be on my show in a couple of weeks. And you know, he shared something there recently where about a year or two ago, a couple of years ago, he was just literally about that close to killing himself. You know, he's literally just at rock bottom, and he just reached out to somebody he had met on Twitter and had through our community of fantasy football people, you know, doing crazy, silly fantasy football stuff, shared how he was feeling, talked about it, got, you know, and started that process of getting help. And, you know, he's still here. He's still here. He's still part of the community. He's still living life and on his journey. And that's a win, you know? So please
100%.
don't make a permanent decision to a temporary set of problems. And if you are having any struggles, especially coming up this time of year and everything that's been going on, reach out to somebody. So, you know, I just think that's important. I think we got to where we are for a reason, but we can certainly talk about football as well.
No, I agree, and I'm sure I don't need to say this, but your DMs are open, my DMs are open. If you just want to talk to us, whether that's about something serious or even if it's not, it's like sometimes just the distraction of talking about something you love can really get the endorphins going and really change your mindset. So, like, I know when I'm really struggling mentally, there's sometimes I need to talk about it with my wife and the people that are very, very close to me and talk that out. And then I'm a talker, and then I feel so much better for releasing. Sometimes when it's not ready, I go and talk about something I love. So whether that's fantasy football, and you know what? I find I do a lot of trades when I'm really just like not in the perfect headspace, because that's the fun bit. And I start engaging people, and I start doing, and you know what? It's just a really good reminder of what's important to you. And like fantasy football is important to me, it's important to you. But even just like regular football, or just anything else, like you can get yourself. It's like that going for a walk mentality. Like, take yourself away from the situation. Perhaps if you don't have the ability to do that, like you're at work or whatever, engaging a chat with someone about something completely innocuous like fantasy football might just make the difference, just for at least that buying you that little bit of time just to process things. And so, yeah,
100%.
I think, you know, as I say, our DMs are open. We'll go there, and appreciate anyone that's still listening. Just if you ever just want to share, if you want to share anything like along those lines, then just reach out and happily talk to anyone about it. But let's just make the community better, and by having more fun, I think that's the key point. We've got about 10 minutes left. Let's talk about some statistical trends. Is there any players that you've been tracking over the last few weeks that you're thinking you want to be buying or you want to be selling based on any trends that you're seeing at the moment in those players?
Yeah, I mean, I've sort of been on a kick there recently. Like I said, my show specifically focuses on Dynasty, so I tend to think about Dynasty. So bear with me if you're not in Dynasty mindset. But in Dynasty, I feel like one of the things that we love to do is get a little bit overhyped on these like wide receiver 3 type young players that were like, yeah, Nico Collins, you know, like, yeah, Rashard Higgins or whoever that person is, because they have a couple good games or because they have a couple of nice underlying stats. And I think those players are good and they're nice to have, but for me, I like having them because I like being able to like sell them high and like sell them like right now. So much buzz going for Josh Palmer, and like, you know, he's just a great example to me of somebody that I think is such a great sell high, because honestly, like if you look at his production profile in college, you look at just even what he has done and what he's accomplished. He had a great game this week, which is awesome. But Mike Williams came in and played 8% of snaps. He was beat up. He wasn't himself. You know, Keenan Allen was there to help out, but like, I don't think Josh Palmer is going to be a top 12 or top 15 wide receiver in the NFL. So if you can package him together with something and get a really underperforming stud or somebody who's like injured right now at the minute and, you know, is going to help you next year, something like that. I think there's a couple of players like him, you know, that I just think people are so hyping up and they're just really excited about that. I'm like, look, actually don't know if really they're going to ever be like a foundational piece of your dynasty roster. They're probably never going to be your wide receiver 1 or even wide receiver 2. So a couple of guys like that, really, to be honest. And then honestly, somebody that I feel like is completely flying under the radar is Juwan Johnson. Like we're talking about what an absolute like wasteland the tight end landscape is, but I picked him up a couple weeks ago for free in Scott Fishbowl, which, you know, we normally just like the waiver wire is barren, and he's been a godsend, you know, like absolute. Every week, you know, he's been getting a few targets. He's been getting quite a lot of touchdowns. He has a really nice rapport with Andy Dalton. You know, even just in a normal sort of PPR league, the last 3 weeks, he's had 12.2, 15.4, 13.7 points. So he could be somebody that, you know, whether you're redraft or dynasty, if you're really struggling or hurting at the tight end position, let's be honest, if you don't have Mark Andrews or Travis Kelce, you're hurting or struggling at the tight end position, might be somebody that you can acquire for much cheaper than you probably should be able to, because there's no name value there. Nobody's not excited. Very few people are excited about the Saints offense, and he's just an unknown person. You know, we all picked him up off waivers this year, basically.
Yeah, and you know, you could cough up a 3rd round pick if you're contending right now and you need to plug someone in that position. And you know, realistically, what's the success of a 3rd round pick? It's not overly high. So trading that for Juwan Johnson, if you're competing and you need to fill a hole on that roster, if you've just lost Kyle Pitts, for example, not the worst bit of business you're going to do this year. It seems like a very easy trade to do. So completely on that one. One of my sell highs in Dynasty right now, if you can get him off your roster, is Tony Pollard, because I don't think we're going to see these heights from him ever again. I think the way that Zeke's contract is structured, the way that's, you know, I'm not saying Tony Pollard is not the more explosive or the better player, far from it. But the way that situation is going down from a coaching perspective is they're just going to keep piling Zeke on. And when he's 100%, he's just going to keep eating into Pollard's gap, no matter how good Pollard's been. You know, it goes back to that. You need to get the unconscious bias out of your head that, oh, well, he's the more talented player. He's going to get more of the ball. That's not how the coaching staff view Tony Pollard, or the money or the contract situation is with Zeke. They are going to get every single dollar out of that contract. They're going to run him down to where there is nothing left. That's just how they're playing this game, and it's effective. He's going to get all the goal line work. Tony Pollard's getting all the grunt work. Now, luckily, he's getting a load of receiving work right now. I don't know how sustainable that is, because that offense has always been very variant based on wide receivers, and it's always been variant. There's never really been, outside of the wide receiver 1, the alpha, the second receiver, whether that's tight end, whether that's a secondary wide receiver, and we're going back a few years, it's always varying, shifting. It always changes around. There's never one player that consistently smashes it in that offense. So I don't see that receiving work being overly likely to continue at the level it is right now. And I think I'd be getting rid of Pollard off my rosters because I think right now you could turn him into some very useful pieces. There'll be someone right now that be willing to pay a king's ransom for Tony Pollard. And I think if you can get yourself a young stud wide receiver, I'd be doing that. I'd be doing it tomorrow. Like, I think if you can get yourself, I mean, we talked about Garrett Wilson. You like to think that his situation will change next year. Or if you can get yourself like a T. Higgins, that's possible. Maybe not this year, but if maybe the T. Higgins owners are out of contention, you never know because they're thinking, well, it's never going to be that great. I don't know. Like, I think you can get some good pieces that
I think you're right. I think Tony Pollard's one of those guys who's been a dynasty darling for a couple of years now and a Twitter darling. And so now that he's actually smashing, I think you're right. You can probably get a king's ransom for him in a lot of places. I mean, you know, people are always desperate for running backs and they're so excited about him, but like he's already been in the league for 4 years. He's going to be getting, you know, a second contract. He's not a spring chicken here, you know? And so I think you're right. I think if you can, dude, what I would say is go and check on Jameson Williams owner. Like if the Jameson Williams owner is like desperate for running back help, it sounds crazy, but you might be able to get Jameson Williams in like a second or a third or something like that for Tony Pollard. I mean, I literally traded Zeke for Jameson Williams like 3 or 4 weeks ago, you know what I mean? Right before he got injured. And, you know, everyone's way more high on Tony Pollard. So I think those kind of deals are possible. So yeah, I like that call.
Yeah. And I think it's doable. Like I said, I just got a few trends then just to finish off. First of all, I'd say just drop Isaiah McKenzie in redraft at least. You know, he's absolutely cooked. Now what we're seeing here is Bills have switched to more 12 personnel. So as a result, it's going to be less playing time for the third wide receiver on the team. The schedule is going to get much easier. So again, you're going to see more 12. I can't see them taking tons of risk. 1 target yesterday, 0 catches, dropped below 40% of snaps played. And then you've got Khalil Shakir, he's flashed. Like, he's not got many receptions this year, but when he has, his yards after catch numbers are really, really good. Right up there with some of the best in the league. So I'm looking at Shakir thinking he could, I'm not saying go pick him up, but he's a player to be keeping an eye on. But I think, to be honest, that third wide receiver, as we've just talking about, third wide receiver in Buffalo is not an area to be targeting right now. It's very much the Diggs and Gabe Davis show. We talk about tight ends if you're struggling. Logan Thomas is a guy I'd be picking up. Now, I know he's not like an elite tight end. He had that great year a couple of years ago. He's been injured, but you know, he came back with 5 for 65 yesterday, which is 11.5 and PPR points. You're quite happy with that. He's played 75% of snaps, so 4 of the last 5 weeks. So it's been a pretty consistent level that he's been playing. But he's got the third easiest strength of schedule according to PFF over the next 3 games. He's got the Falcons and then the Giants twice. So, like, that schedule to get you into the playoffs, like if you've just lost Kyle Pitts, if you've got Mike Gesicki, if you've got a tight end that you've been struggling with, Logan Thomas is basically free right now. He might be appeared on some people's rosters or watch lists because he's finally put up a game after all this time. But yeah, I'd be looking to make the most out of that. Oh, look, Stacey's joined in. Hey, guys, did I miss any talk on Zach Wilson? Does he stay the starter? Personally, I like Mike White. I'd play Mike White, but then it's not my team. You?
Man, I just don't understand. Like, I really just don't. I think Robert Saleh is a great coach, and he's great, like, defensive-minded coach. You know, their defense looks really good. But I don't know, man. I just don't understand, like, what they're seeing in Zach Wilson because he had, like, I believe it was something like a 56% completion percentage in his rookie year, which is really bad. And then this year he's like 56%. He's not improved. He's not showing signs of improvement. He doesn't look better every game. I don't know. I feel like at this stage, Robert Saleh strikes me as quite a stubborn coach, you know, not in a bad way even necessarily, but he's just very single-minded, very like determined. And I feel like he's kind of made up his mind that Zach Wilson's the dude, at least for now. And I feel like he's going to stick with him for a while. So I hate it. Like, I wish it was like even Joe Flacco, like throw some bombs to Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore. But man, I don't know. I feel like he really wants to stick with Zach Wilson. I don't see it, man. I really don't. I don't think Zach Wilson's got it.
I don't at all. And to be honest, I wasn't that high on him. I looked at that draft class and him going at 2 looked like a mistake. And I think the NFL learned from that draft class because we've seen it with this draft class that's just happened with the QBs. Like, you can't tell me that Malik Willis is a huge downgrade on Zach Wilson. I don't think he is. He's certainly not like 90, 100 picks worse than Zach Wilson. I think what's happened is people looked at these QBs going stupidly early, and I think the NFL's had this sort of referendum that average talent shouldn't be going. This has been a trend over the last 5 years. Jared Goff, 1 overall. Mitchell Trubisky, 2 overall. Baker Mayfield, 1 overall. Sam Darnold, 2 overall. At the end of the day, the NFL over the last 6-7 years doesn't have a great history of drafting quarterback. Yeah, okay, Joe Burrow was a great 1 overall. Like, he's proved worthy of that. That draft class, by the way, of him, Tua, and Herbert might be the best one of the last 10 years, really, just with those 3 players and the level that they bring.
Yeah.
And I think the NFL has kind of made this decision of, hey, we need to cool the jets on the quarterbacks a little bit because it's not working. Like, it's not working taking these guys at the top of the board because unless you've got a special guy, no one blames the Jags for taking Lawrence. No one's going to blame you for taking a chance on someone like Trey Lance, given the unique skill set, but you have to understand that's a long-term project. And I think in the right situation, like the 49ers was, with a coach with a long-term contract, I don't mind that play. I wouldn't have taken him at 3, but if that's the guy for you, then, who am I to say? But I think, Zach Wilson, for me, I think the Jets are in a really good opportunity to win that division or at least get a playoff berth. And I'm thinking you have to go with the guy. And I think if Zach Wilson came out yesterday and went, hey, that loss, that's on me. Sorry, guys. Like, our D was extraordinary. I didn't get it done. Like, I'm sorry. My perception of him would change significantly. When he says, does he owe the D an apology? And he goes, no. No, the loss wasn't on us. Like, you scored 3 points, dude. Like, come on. Like, you had 2 yards in the second half, 2 yards of offense in the entire half of football. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, that's ridiculous.
Exactly.
Like,
and that's like leadership 101 is like, you have to take responsibility. I mean, we laugh and joke about, Russell Wilson being super cheesy and all that sort of stuff, but like, at least he even does that kind of stuff. He'll start out with like, I've got to be better. We've got to play better. It's on me. I need to get better, and it's like, that is leadership 101. You see guys like Josh Allen, they're tore up after a loss. They're just distraught, about the mistakes that they made and things like that. Whereas like, even that press conference was just like, did you guys make a mistake? Nope. Next question, and it's like, okay, I don't know. And don't get me wrong. Like you said, it could be his defense mechanism. He could just be feeling like crap about himself and like he doesn't want to get into it. So he just kind of moves past it or whatever, but it's just not a good look,
It's not a good look. And Baker Mayfield was very similar, and look at how that story has panned out. Like, I just think you've got to learn and evolve and improve. And as you say, Zach Wilson isn't improving. And I think we're at the point now.
You can't start any Jet right now with confidence. You know what I mean?
No.
You can hope that Michael Carter has a good game. You can hope that Garrett Wilson gets back on track. You can hope that Zach Wilson somehow miraculously turns a corner. But man, you can't start any Jet right now with confidence.
No. Someone asked me, like, should I trade for Garrett Wilson in a redraft league? And I'm like, who's your wide receiver core? And like, his wide receiver 5 was Pickens. And I was like, does Garrett Wilson make your team better? And he said, well, I've got more depth. I was like, yeah, but does he make your team better? Like, he doesn't make your team better. Does he make your depth better? He becomes your wide receiver 6 on your team. Like, okay, if you're looking for depth, but like, you can go get another guy. You can get a guy off a waiver wire is going to be just as impactful, and you're not going to have to give a piece up to do it. So, yeah, I think that's the point, as you say. I think you can't trust any of them with confidence, and bad quarterbacks can generate good fantasy football play, but somehow Zach Wilson just really can't make it work. And I hope they do sort it out. Just before I let you go, because I've teased this Rashad White thing for.
Oh yes.
So I might as well get this out because I did talk about this.
Hot take.
With our page. It's not a hot take. What I want to do is call the Jets on Rashad White. Okay, so people now, everyone's talking about Rashad White being like the hot ad this week coming off the bye, and he's going to get Leonard Fournette's job, and then Fournette's got this hip injury, right? So let's look at that game in Germany, right? 22 carries, 105 yards. Incredible performance. Wins angry runs with that stiff arm where he sent Quandre Diggs like back into the ether. Like, I mean, it was unbelievable. But there was a reason that those opportunities happened. So, first of all, that weekend, week 10, the Buccaneers had the most third downs in the NFL. And they converted on third down 10 of 15. which is just not what the Buccaneers do. So, like, converting on 67%. I think the Bills are the best converting offense in the NFL. They're converting just over 50%. The Bucs this season have been converting at around about 27% on third down. So they're not a team that are that bad that they should only be converting on 27% on third down, but they also shouldn't be converting on 67% of third down, right? So those third down, achieving those third downs then allowed them to run the ball. Now, when the Buccaneers ran the ball, I think when you take the kneel downs out, it was about 36, 37 times in that game. 24 of the times they ran the ball was on first down. Like, that's what the Buccaneers do. The Buccaneers only tend to run the ball 25% of the time, and 70% or more of the time, that tends to be exclusively on first down. So Rachaad White isn't getting receiving work that's really notable. He's not really getting any looks at the goal line. He's not getting any looks. And what he's doing is just getting the first down grunt work. Sort of what I mentioned about Isaiah Pacheco in the sense of, but the difference between Pacheco is they'll give Pacheco 20 carries. In order for White to get 20 carries, he needs Leonard Fournette to not be a thing. He needs the Buccaneers to be extraordinarily brilliant on third down. And they need to be a better offensive line. I mean, like, even their run success in that game was absolutely terrible. They were 20th of 28th in terms of all the teams that played that weekend on run success in general. But actually, when they ran the ball on first down, which was almost exclusively the whole time they ran the ball, they were 26th of 28th on rushing the ball and run success on first down. So, like, the reason why people have that positive impression is they look at that game and think, okay, 22 carries, 105 yards. This is it. This is Rachaad White's season. I tell you now, if he carries the ball 22 times in a game for the rest of the season, I'll be absolutely gobsmacked. I just don't see it because the Buccaneers don't run the ball that many times. Like, they just don't. And so if you're hanging your hat on that game going, hang on, they're going to turn a corner, I don't think it's going to happen. They've paid Leonard Fournette a lot of money. I think he gets more of a role, Rachaad White. I think Rachaad White is arguably warranted of a full starting role. This isn't a talent problem. He certainly looked more explosive. He had multiple runs over 10 yards in that game. But I just don't think he's going to get afforded the opportunity because this is what the Buccaneers don't do. They don't run the football. Like, they were the league low team last year running the football. They were the league low team in their Super Bowl year at running the football. They're going to be around about the league low team this year running the football. And so when you've now, and Fournette will get that passing work, and I still think Fournette will get the goal line work, and I still think Fournette will get the 2-minute drill work because he's more accustomed to it. He's been in that role. So what are you leaving Rachaad White with? Early downs, and that's about it. He's going to get all the early down work. Now, if he rips a few, then great. He might get those 100-yard gains. But I don't see the touchdowns, and I don't see the volume. And I think that's the only reason I'm calling the Jets on Rachaad White a little bit, because I just don't see where he's going to get the volume to be sustainable. I think you're looking at him thinking if he gets 10 points, he's had a great week. And I just don't think he gets there often enough.
You heard it here, folks. Direct all hate mail at Murf_NFL.
God, don't. Not after I told people to sit Kadarius Toney this week.
Oh, no.
I literally, that's where most of the hate came from this weekend. I told people to sit Kadarius Toney.
Oh, okay.
And people wouldn't have it. I took on Twitter. Don't do it. But yeah, no, and I love Rachaad White. I'm a big fan. I think he's a very talented running back. It's not a talent problem. It's a Tampa offense problem.
Yeah,
that's all
fair.
it is. So it's not. Yeah, I think Rachaad White next year. I think Fournette leaves this team. So I have some, I don't want to say overly inside information, but some stuff that might not be published anywhere, that the team didn't actually want to bring Fournette back this year. But it was Tom Brady knocking on the door, insisting that they re-signed. Because he went all the way to New England, didn't he, Leonard Fournette? Like, he met teams. Like, the team went in a hurry to re-sign him. The team didn't want him back.
Yeah.
Like, this guy off the back of the Super Bowl year, they rewarded him with a 1-year, $3.5 million contract. And then they paid him this year at the assistance of Tom Brady when he came out of retirement. So I think the team move on. I think Rachaad White for a dynasty asset right now is peachy. I think he's got a good opportunity to progress, because I think when Brady goes, I think they could rechange this offense. I think opportunity will be there. But for this year, I can't put Rashad White in a lineup unless I'm literally down to bare bones, because I can't see him getting many 10-point games.
He's no Jamal Williams, am I right?
No, he's no Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams, the touchdown king.
Absolute stud.
Yeah. I mean, Jamal Williams is like the running back equivalent of Mike Evans. He only needs like 5 carries for 3 touchdowns and like 7 yards.
Yeah.
Although Drake London's morphed into the Mike Evans role now. Like, I find that fascinating. He's literally like the same player, like 1 catch, 2 yards and a touchdown. Like, Mike Evans would be delighted with that stat.
Yeah. Mike Evans is passing the baton.
He's keeping it in the division to Drake London. I love it. Anyway, man, this has been a blast. We've covered everything and a half on this show, right? It's been phenomenal. So tell everyone where they can find the show. Tell everyone where they can find you and engage and see some of your hilarious videos and memes that you post.
Oh man, no, thanks again for having me on, man. It's been a blast, been just what I needed on this Monday. But yeah, I mean, you can catch me on Twitter if you want to at FFEvolution. You can check out the show Dynasty Debates, a year-round show at the moment in season, doing like a Tuesday morning sort of recap episode, just literally highlighting a couple of Dynasty takeaways from each weekend slate, and then on Thursdays drop a episode that has a guest. So we kind of get ready for the upcoming week, talk about some sits and starts and some players, but we also talk about some trades and get into some dynasty trade theory, things like that. And then in the off season, we do a lot of like prospect scouting and dynasty theory and all that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, I write a weekly Flex article over at Dynasty Nerds for, just literally let's talk about Flex and love a good pun myself. And yeah, that's about it, man. Thanks very much for having me on. Appreciate it.
No, it's been awesome. And make sure you check out all of Evan's work. You'd be much better off with your Dynasty lineups for following him and for reading his column every week on Dynasty Nerds. So make sure you do check that out. And I know Evan well enough to know that if you have any questions about his process or how he does things, or if you just want to know how to put a good video that could potentially go viral together, I know Evan's DMs are open and he'd be more than happy to talk to you. But it's been a pleasure. We'll get you on again soon. Rush Nation, thanks for the conversation. Thanks for listening. I hope that it's been thought-provoking. I hope that you've all taken something from it. Fantasy football, not fantasy football, whatever. Just know that our DMs are open. You can always chat to us, and appreciate each and every one of you that choose to interact with us and give up their time or your time every week to listen to us. I'll be back with the Waiver Wire in the morning, and we will be back with the Dynasty show tomorrow. And then we've got a lot of other shows, Fast Action Friday on Friday, the DFS show. I'll be back with a matchup show and a few other pieces, and join our Patreon. And I release a weekly Patreon show where I get into a lot of theory-based strategy and going through bits and pieces. So you can hear my sort of brain dump there. So thanks as always. And don't forget, on this Monday, while you're watching the World Cup, keep rushing.